Balinal had been married to Saipho for 10 years, and she thought they were a perfect team. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise to make his breakfast, pack his lunch, and iron his work shirts. She managed their home like clockwork, cooked his favorite meals, and even helped with paperwork for his small construction business. She believed they were building a future together, one brick at a time, a strong marriage, a happy home, and maybe one day, children running around their yard in Durban. But something began to change. At first, it was small things, late-night phone calls, sudden business meetings, that kept him out until midnight, a new cologne she didn't buy. Then came the change in how he dressed, tighter shirts, flashier watches, and a phone that never left his hand. He'd smile at his screen, quickly turning it off when she walked in. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Balinal gently asked, "Who's keeping you so busy lately, Saipho?" He didn't even look up. His tone was cold. "You wouldn't understand," he said sharply. "You're just a housewife." Those words cut deeper than any knife. She had given her all to make him comfortable, to help him rise. Yet now he spoke like she was nothing. That night, as he scrolled through his phone with a grin she hadn't seen in years, Balinal stared at the man she once called her soulmate and realized loyalty was no longer enough for him. One sunny Sunday afternoon, Balinal decided to surprise Saipho at his construction site. She had cooked his favorite meal, pap, chakalaka, and grilled chicken, wrapped it neatly, and smiled to herself as she imagined his face lighting up. He had been working long hours lately, and she thought maybe a small act of love would remind him that someone still cared deeply for him. When she arrived, she saw him before he saw her. Saipho was standing near a half-built wall, laughing loudly. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a young woman in tight jeans and a bright yellow top, her hand resting comfortably on his shoulder. They looked too close, too familiar. Balinal froze, her heart thudding painfully. Saipho noticed her and quickly stepped back. "Oh, Balinal," he said awkwardly, forcing a smile. "This is Chiroletso, my new assistant." The young woman flashed a small, smug smile and said softly, "Nice to finally meet you." Balinal managed to smile back, though her hands trembled as she handed him the food. "I brought lunch," she said quietly. Saipho barely looked at her. He placed the lunchbox on a bench and went back to his conversation, leaving Balinal standing there, feeling invisible. That night, something in her shifted. After he fell asleep, she sat in the dark living room, staring at his phone on the table. Her heart told her not to look, but her gut told her she already knew. She picked it up and scrolled through his messages. Her breath caught when she read one from Chiroletso. "Can't wait till she's gone. Then it'll just be us." Another said, "She doesn't suspect a thing." The world around her blurred. Her chest felt heavy, but not from shock. She had seen this coming, she just didn't want to believe it. The man she had loved, cooked for, prayed for, was laughing with someone else while she carried the weight of their marriage alone. But instead of crying, Balinal sat there quietly, her mind clear for the first time in months. She realized love shouldn't make you feel small. It shouldn't make you beg to be seen. Before dawn, she packed a small bag, just a few clothes, her ID, and her mother's old Bible. She looked around the house they built together, touched the wall she once painted with hope, and whispered, "If he wants freedom, he'll get it. And so will I." Then she walked out into the cool morning air, leaving behind the woman she used to be, and stepping into the woman she was about to become. Within just a few weeks after Balinal left, Saipho brought Chiroletso into the very same house he and Balinal once built together, brick by brick, with love, sweat, and dreams. The curtains Balinal had sewn with her own hands now framed photos of Saipho and his new queen. The bed they once shared now held someone else. Neighbors watched in shock, whispering among themselves, but Saipho didn't seem to care. He walked around proudly, holding Chiroletso's hand like a prize he had won. People who once admired Balinal pitied her now. She gave him everything, they said quietly at the grocery store. And he replaced her just like that. Some even stopped greeting Saipho, shaking their heads as he laughed loudly in public with his new love. But the humiliation cut deepest from Balinal. She would pass by their old street sometimes, seeing Chiroletso's car parked in the driveway she once swept every morning. It hurt, but she kept her head high. Then one afternoon a lawyer came knocking with divorce papers. Saipho had filed, claiming irreconcilable differences. He didn't even bother to talk to her face to face. He thought it was the final blow, that he'd taken her house, her name, and her dignity. But what Saipho didn't know was that months before things fell apart, Balinal had already sensed the shift in him. His tone had changed, his kindness had faded, and she could feel the distance growing between them. So she quietly visited a lawyer, a woman named Thandika, who became her silent guardian angel. Together, they reviewed every document Saipho had ever made her sign. And what Saipho thought were ownership transfers were actually duplicates. Copies with minor, legal changes that kept the house and 2 company trucks under Balinal's name. She had protected herself without even realizing how much she'd need it. So when the divorce papers came, she smiled softly and signed them. No tears, no drama. She simply wrote her name neatly at the bottom and handed them back. Saipho thought he had taken everything from her. But in truth, everything he was flaunting, his home, his trucks, his new beginning, still legally belonged to her. And while he laughed loudly with his new woman inside her living room, Balinal sat quietly in her cousin's small apartment in Richards Bay, sipping tea and whispering to herself, "Let him build castles on sand. The storm is coming, and I'll be standing when it passes." After leaving everything behind, Balinal moved to her cousin's small house in Richards Bay. The room she got was tiny, just a bed, a chair, and a cracked mirror, but to her it felt like peace. For the first time in years, she could breathe without walking on eggshells. She cried some nights, yes, but they were tears of release, not regret. She promised herself that if she had to start over, she'd do it with strength, not sorrow. A few weeks later, she found a job managing a small bakery in town. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave her purpose again. Every morning, she arrived before dawn, kneading dough, checking stock, and greeting customers with a smile that hid her pain. The bakery owner, Mama Lindy, saw her dedication and treated her like family. "You've got a gift," she said one day. "Not just with baking, but with people." That compliment lit something inside Balinal. She began learning everything she could: how to attract customers, how to use social media, how to manage money. At night, she took free online courses in business management and marketing, watching videos on her cousin's old laptop until her eyes ached. Slowly, her confidence returned. With her savings and a small loan, she started her own brand, Sweet Rise Catering. The name came from her belief that even broken people can rise again, just like dough in the oven. She started small: birthday cakes, wedding snacks, office lunches, but her food carried something special: love, care, and resilience. People felt it. Orders began pouring in. Meanwhile, Saipho and Chiralezzo were living loud: new clothes, weekend trips, fancy restaurants, but their happiness was shallow. While he spent to impress, Balinal was quietly building. Every rand she earned, she invested back into her dream. She bought her first delivery van, then another, then a third. 2 years later, Sweet Rise Catering wasn't just a local name. It was a growing brand with contracts at hotels, business events, and government functions. She had 5 employees, 3 vans, and a waiting list for orders. She even hired single mothers and young girls who needed a second chance, just like she once did. One evening, as she stood in her small office, looking at her workers laughing in the kitchen, Balinal whispered, "Look at God." She had lost everything once, but from those ashes, she built something far more beautiful. While Saipho's world revolved around show and status, Balinal's world was filled with purpose and peace. And this time, the only person she depended on was herself. While Balinal was quietly rising, Saipho's world was slowly breaking apart. What once looked like a perfect life with Chiralezzo started to lose its shine. His construction business, which used to keep him busy and proud, began showing cracks. Projects were delayed, clients stopped calling, and the workers who once respected him started quitting one by one. Chiralezzo had convinced him to modernize things, to let her handle the finances, to sell a few company trucks for smart investments. "Trust me, babe," she'd say, smiling sweetly. "I know how to grow money." Saipho, blinded by her charm, nodded and agreed. After all, he thought she was young, fresh, and business-minded. the opposite of what he once called boring Balinal. At first he didn't notice anything wrong. Chirolezzo always had an explanation ready. The supplier's late. The client hasn't paid yet. The money's tied up in shares. But soon the numbers stopped adding up. Money started vanishing from accounts. Suppliers began refusing to deliver because of unpaid invoices. His phone buzzed with angry messages from workers waiting for their salaries. Still he defended her. "She's young," he told his friends. "She just needs guidance." But deep down he could feel something slipping away. Not just his business but his control. He started drinking more, shouting at his staff, and blaming everyone but himself. One day his longtime supplier, Mr. Kumalo, pulled him aside quietly and said, "Saifo, my boy, do you even know what that girl is doing behind your back?" Saifo frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" The old man sighed. "She's been buying land, under her own name. Using your money. People talk, my friend. Open your eyes." Saifo laughed it off at first, pretending not to care. But that night, as he watched Chirolezzo's phone light up with messages she quickly hid, something inside him twisted. He remembered how he once smiled at his own phone like that, when Balinal used to ask who he was talking to. The house felt colder now. The laughter that once filled the rooms was gone, replaced by tension and silence. Chirolezzo started coming home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. When he asked, she snapped, "Don't start acting like a jealous husband now." For the first time, Saifo felt fear instead of pride. His empire was slipping away. His name was being whispered with pity, and the woman he had chosen over loyalty was now slowly undoing everything he had built. And in the quiet of that night, he began to realize, the same betrayal he gave Balinal might just be returning to him, piece by piece. It was a quiet Friday afternoon when Saifo decided to come home early from work. Something in his chest felt heavy, like a warning he couldn't explain. As he pulled into the driveway, he noticed the gate was half open. The yard looked strangely empty, the air too still. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe Chirolezzo had gone shopping. But when he stepped inside, the silence hit him hard. Half of the furniture was gone. The paintings on the walls had disappeared. The TV stand was empty, and the safe in the bedroom lay cracked open, its contents scattered across the floor. He rushed to the closet. All of Chirolezzo's clothes were gone. Her shoes, her handbags, her perfume, everything. Even the jewelry he'd bought her last month had vanished. His heart started racing as he checked his phone. No messages. No calls. He ran to his office drawer to check the company documents. But the files were missing. His hands trembled as he logged into his business account. The balance, zero. Every cent had been transferred out. He sat down, dizzy with disbelief. The woman he had chosen over his wife, the one he had trusted with everything, had cleaned him out completely, gone without a trace. Then, as if to add salt to his wounds, he noticed one more thing missing, the title deed to the house. The paper that proved ownership, once locked safely away, was nowhere to be found. He remembered how weeks earlier, Chirolezzo had asked him to sign a transfer document she said was for tax purposes. He hadn't even read it. He had just smiled and signed, proud that his smart young wife was handling business matters. Now it hit him. He had signed away his own home. Saifo sank to the floor, his face buried in his hands. The echoes of his laughter with Chirolezzo haunted the empty rooms. The same place he once filled with pride and music now sounded hollow and cold. Neighbors peeked through their windows, whispering about how the mighty had fallen. By nightfall, Saifo sat outside on the porch, the sun setting behind the house that was no longer his. Everything was gone, the company, the house, the cars, the savings. Even the woman he gave up his marriage for had disappeared without a goodbye. He finally understood what Balinal must have felt, the sting of betrayal, the loneliness of being replaced. But unlike her, he had no one to blame but himself. And as darkness fell, Saifo realized the cruelest truth of all. The woman he thought was his upgrade had stolen not just his wealth, but his peace, his pride, and his soul. Saifo's fall from grace was fast and painful. One week he was the man with a big house, a shiny car, and a beautiful woman on his arm. And the next, he had nothing but a suitcase and guilt heavy in his chest. After Chirolezzo vanished, he tried to fix things, but there was nothing left to save. His business accounts were frozen, his workers had left, and his name had become a warning instead of a success story. With nowhere else to go, he packed a few clothes and went to stay with his old friend, Sizwe, who lived in a small 2-room flat. The first night there he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, memories of Mbalanel came flooding back, her soft laughter in the kitchen, her quiet support when times were tough, and how easily he had thrown it all away. Days turned into weeks. The phone that once buzzed with clients and admirers now stayed silent. In his loneliness, he found himself scrolling through his contacts until he stopped at her name, Mbalanel. His hands trembled as he pressed call. She answered after a few seconds, her voice calm and steady. "Hello." He hesitated, then said quietly, "Mbalanel, it's me. I made a mistake." For a long moment she didn't speak. Then, in a gentle but firm voice, she replied, "You didn't make a mistake, Saifo. You made a choice." Those words hit him harder than anything Chirolezzo had ever done. His throat tightened. "Can we talk? Please, I just want to see you," he begged. But Mbalanel's tone remained calm. "There's nothing to talk about. I don't need closure from a man who replaced love with ego." Before he could respond, the line went silent. She sat there afterwards, staring at her phone, her heart surprisingly calm. Years ago, his words would have shattered her. But now they no longer had power. She had already healed, not through revenge, but through rebuilding herself piece by piece. That night, as she looked around her busy catering office, the smell of fresh bread in the air and laughter from her employees echoing down the hall, Mbalanel smiled. A real, peaceful smile. Not because Saifo had lost everything, but because she had finally found herself. And somewhere across the city, Saifo sat alone in the dark, realizing the truth he had run from all along. He hadn't just lost a wife, he had lost the only woman who ever truly loved him. Months passed, and life moved on, at least from Mbalanel. Her catering company, Sweet Rise, had grown beyond what she ever dreamed. She had a full team, steady clients, and a calm heart. She laughed again, sang while baking, and even started helping young women open small food businesses. She had built not just a company, but a new version of herself, stronger, wiser, and free. Then one hot afternoon, as she was leaving her office to deliver an order, she saw a familiar figure standing by the entrance. It took her a moment to recognize him. Saifo. He looked nothing like the proud man she once knew. His clothes were worn, his shoulders slumped, and the sparkle of arrogance in his eyes was gone. He looked older, thinner, and tired, like life had finally caught up to him. For a second, her heart clenched with old memories, but she quickly pushed them aside. He stepped closer and said softly, "I heard you're doing well. You always were the smart one." Her employees stopped what they were doing, watching curiously. Mbalanel didn't raise her voice or show anger. She simply looked at him with quiet strength. "I built everything you took for granted," she said calmly. "Brick by brick, the same way I once helped you build your dream." Saifo swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "I just wanted to say sorry." For a brief moment, silence filled the air. Mbalanel looked at him, the man who had once made her feel small now standing before her, humbled by his own choices. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Apology accepted," she said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." Her words were soft, but they carried the weight of everything she had endured. Saifo lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. Mbalanel turned to her staff and smiled gently, signaling them to continue their work. Then she walked toward her car, her steps steady and graceful. She didn't look back. Saifo stood there on the sidewalk, watching her drive away. The smell of freshly baked bread drifted from the shop, the same warmth he once had at home but would never feel again. For Mbalanel, that moment wasn't about revenge. It was closure. She had nothing left to prove. The man who once walked away from her now stood in the same place she had been, on the outside, watching her move forward. And this time she left him there, just as he had once left her. Months passed, and Mbalanel's life became something she once only dreamed about. Her catering company, Taste of Grace, had spread across the country. From weddings to corporate galas, Everyone wanted her food, her touch, her name on their events. She had built her empire from the same kitchen where she once cried alone, proof that pain can turn into power when handled right. One bright Saturday morning, her team received a huge order for a high-end corporate celebration. It was for a large construction company launching a new project in Johannesburg. Balinal smiled, unaware that life was about to bring her face to face with her past. She arrived at the venue with her staff, dressed in her elegant black uniform with a gold Taste of Grace logo shining proudly on her chest. Her delivery vans lined the entrance, her employees buzzing with confidence. But when she stepped inside the grand hall, her heart skipped. There he was, Saifo, thinner, older, and standing in a suit that didn't quite fit. He froze the moment he saw her logo on the catering tables. It was his old company hosting the event, the same one he had once built with her help, and later lost because of greed. The irony hit him like a storm. The company that once threw her away now relied on her to feed its guests. Saifo's chest tightened as he watched Balinal move gracefully through the crowd, checking every dish, smiling at her staff, radiating quiet power. She wasn't the woman he left, she was stronger, surer, untouchable. When she took the stage to greet the guests, the CEO smiled and said into the microphone, "Today's incredible catering is brought to you by Taste of Grace, a company that represents resilience, excellence, and class. Please give a round of applause to the owner, Mrs. Balinal Dlamini." The room erupted in cheers. Balinal thanked everyone warmly, her voice steady and full of gratitude. From the corner of her eye, she saw Saifo clapping slowly, his eyes glistening with silent regret. He didn't try to approach her, not this time. He just stood there, realizing the truth too late. He had traded a diamond for dust, chasing glitter that faded too soon. And as she walked past him after the event, surrounded by her proud team, Saifo whispered under his breath, "She was always the one." Balinal didn't turn around. She didn't need to. Life had already spoken for her, and this time she was the one who won. Years later, Balinal sat on a soft white couch in a bright TV studio, lights shining on her face. She looked calm, graceful, and confident, a woman who had survived storms and built her own sunshine. The host smiled and said, "You've become an inspiration to so many women across the country. What would you say to those who've been replaced, forgotten, or betrayed, just like you once were?" Balinal took a quiet breath, her eyes soft but strong. Then she smiled gently and said, "I would tell them this. Never let betrayal define you. Let it refine you. What breaks you can also build you if you don't let it make you bitter." The studio went silent, the audience hanging on every word. "When someone leaves you for something better, don't chase them," she continued. "Just focus on becoming the best version of yourself. Because real love, the kind that's honest and loyal, never needs replacing." The interviewer nodded, visibly moved. Balinal smiled again, but this time there was no trace of pain in her eyes, only peace. "My success was never about revenge," she said softly. "It was about rebirth. I didn't rise to prove him wrong. I rose to prove to myself that I could." As the cameras zoomed in for the final shot, she looked directly into the lens and whispered, almost like a secret meant for every woman watching at home, "He thought he upgraded. But the only thing he lost was real love." The studio went quiet for a moment, then applause filled the air. Balinal smiled, not because Saifo had fallen, but because she had finally risen above everything that once tried to break her. And in that moment she was truly free.